All right, it is time for us to get started. We're going to be picking up where we left off last time in the book of Luke. We're starting chapter 7. That's Luke chapter 7. We're going to do our best to get through this tonight. As many of you have told me before, I'm also suffering with the allergies that we've had in Tennessee. And so we're going to hope that my voice holds out for this class. But we're going to be picking up starting in verse 1 of chapter 7. We had just finished up chapter 6, and chapter 6 was really a major point of Jesus' ministry where he is beginning to teach doctrines to these individuals more than just who he is and referencing prophecy. Rather, this is actually him making authoritative statements to these individuals and teaching doctrines to them, helping them to abandon some of the preconceived ideas that they had, but also trying to help them to reevaluate themselves and look at themselves in relation to what the old law actually said versus what they had perceived it to say. So starting in verse 1 of chapter 7, let's go ahead and read verses 1 through verse 10, whoever gets there first.
Now when he had ended all his sayings in the audience of the people, he entered into Capernaum. And a certain centurion's servant, who was dear unto him, was sick and ready to die. And when he heard of Jesus, he said unto him, the elders of the Jews. He said unto him, the elders of the Jews, beseeching him that he would come and heal his servant. And when they came to Jesus, they besought him instantly, saying that he was worthy for whom he should do this. For he loveth our nation, and he hath built as a synagogue. Then Jesus went with them, and when he was now not far from the house, the centurion sent friends to him, saying unto him, Lord, trouble not thyself, for I am not worthy that thou shouldest enter under my roof. Wherefore, neither thought I myself worthy to come unto thee, but say in a word, and my servant shall be healed. For I also am a man set under authority, having under the soldiers, and I say unto one, go, and he goeth, and to another, come, and he cometh. And to my servant, do this, and he doeth. When Jesus answered these things, he marveled at him, and turned him about, and said unto the people who followed him, I say unto you, I have not found so great faith, no, not in Israel. And they were sent for into the house, found the servants while whom they had been sick.
All right, so this is a little bit of a lengthy read, but I wanted us to see all of this in its context and not break it up piece by piece. We are going to get into periodic pieces of the book of Luke that are more, we're telling events that happen, and then we have other sections that are more teaching chapters. Luke chapter 7 is one of those that's more of a story chapter or an illustration of what's taking place, historical references. And we see this example of this centurion. Now, we see him go into the city of Capernaum, and I have to ask the question, has Jesus already been to the city of Capernaum up to this point? Yes, he had. In fact, we know this because if we skip ahead a little bit earlier, we see when Jesus goes into the city of Nazareth, what did he say these people were thinking about? We want you to do these great miracles that you did from where? From Capernaum. We see this mentioned over and over again. In fact, some biblical scholars have described Capernaum as Jesus' base of operations. He would consistently return to the city of Capernaum. It was the place that received him the greatest of all of the cities that he went to. They wanted to continuously hear what he was saying and to see what he was doing. And so as he's going about his mission around the Sea of Galilee or the Lake of Gennesaret, we read in other accounts, He is going across and back and forth across the Sea of Galilee, teaching people in a very small region, but he is doing so from kind of a base of operations. Now, this is not the only time we see people do this. Another example of this would be that of Antioch. Whenever Paul and his missionary journeys were going abroad, Antioch was kind of a base of operations for him for a while. And so we see Jesus returning to the city of Capernaum. And notice what it says. Now, when he had concluded all his sayings, this is referencing the sermon he had preached in chapter 6. In the hearing of the people, he entered Capernaum, and a certain centurion's servant who was dear to him, and a certain centurion's servant who was dear to him was sick and ready to die. So when he had heard about Jesus, he sent elders of the Jews to him, pleading with him to come and heal his servant. So we are introduced to this character, and we really are skipping around. We were in Jesus' perspective and what he was doing, but then it's like we're watching a movie or something, it cuts to the next scene. And we're seeing what's taking place with this centurion. He hears Jesus is coming back to the city of Capernaum. And he has a servant who is very dear to him, who is near to death. He is sick. Now, again, as any of us would have, where does he go for healing? He goes to Jesus, right? He hears of the power of this man. He hears what he's been able to accomplish. And as any of us would, we want the best care for those we care about. And so he says that he wants to bring Jesus to him. But did you notice something interesting? Who did he send? Elders of the Jews. Why do you think a centurion, rather than maybe going himself or maybe sending one of his own servants, why do you think he picked a Jewish elder to go? If he's a centurion, he is an officer in what army? The Roman army. Implying what? He commands great authority, yes, but what does it imply about him and his identity? He was not a Jew. He was a Gentile. Now remember, we are in Judea at this time, and what have we reiterated over and over and over again about Judea? What kind of environment is this? Starts with an N. You hear this on the news all the time. Nationalistic. Very nationalistic. These are individuals who do not like the Gentiles being in their place, and in fact, it is so aggressive that they have tried to ostracize Gentiles from every facet of their society that they are allowed to do. This man is allowed to be here because he is a centurion, meaning he's bringing with him the authority of the Roman Empire, meaning it doesn't matter how mad the Jews are about it, this man's here. He has authority in this region. But it's fascinating to me how this man decides to go about this. He sends these Jewish elders, maybe even some of them that were not a big fan of Jesus, but he sends them, he says, hey, you go talk to Jesus, and you tell him that I want him to come heal my servant. Now, did you notice something else interesting about what he said? What was his attitude? What was his attitude about this?
He was very unworthy.
He was very humble about this. Now, if you're a centurion in the Roman Empire, do you think that there is any reason why you should be humble to Jewish people? No. No, you have the might of Caesar behind you. You're walking into these streets. You own these streets. These people, they're just subjects of the Roman Empire. Many of these people are not even citizens of the Roman Empire. They are really nothing more than a vassal colony of the Roman Empire. You're here to make sure that they follow the rules of Rome, you get their money, and that's it. That is your main purpose here. These are nothing to you. And yet, he goes to the leaders of this city, and he says, I want you to go to Jesus. I can't do this.
I think he understood the delegation of authority, since he was a military commander. And then Jesus had authority from God to be able to do the things that he was doing. And so, by that, he sent these Sadducees to go there because he realized that, he respected Jesus' authority.
Well, he is looking at this too. Yeah, he's looking at this too from this perspective. Does he have the power to solve his problem?
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Jesus has the power delegated to him by God, and he respects that authority that he has.
Absolutely. He respects the power that Jesus has exerted in his mission work. And so when he is considering this, not to cut you off there, but just to think about this for a moment, when Jesus is going about his work, he is spreading his own fame. Not in the sense of he's doing this purposefully, but when he goes into a city like Capernaum or goes into a city like Nazareth and he is preaching and he is teaching and he has done these miracles in many of these other cities, that gets around. And what this Roman centurion is thinking here, he's saying, I know that my servant is in need. I know that Jesus has the power to do this. And it's fascinating to me. Notice how it was worded. It says, so when he had heard about Jesus, he sent elders of the Jews to him, pleading. Pleading. What does the word pleading imply? Begging. Who begs? What kind of station are you in if you are begging? You're desperate. You're at the bottom of the totem pole here. But when we consider this man, this is a Roman centurion. He has the ability to command Jesus to come and speak to him. But he recognizes something that many of the Jews didn't even recognize. He recognized that this power denotes he has something greater than him. Yes, I might be wearing a uniform. Yes, I might have the authority of Rome at my back, but I don't have that power. I am not capable of doing that. And frankly, if someone is capable of doing the things that he is doing, where do I think I can command him and he'll actually come? So this man, he recognizes that Jesus is in a position that he has not attained, and he sends them pleading with him to come and heal his servant. Now, it's interesting to think about this man. Before we even get any of the other context that we get later on in this chapter, we see a couple things about him right off the bat. First of all, he's a compassionate man. This is one of his servants. He cares for this man, and he is trying to get the best care that he can, and he's not too proud to go to others deemed lesser. So we see that. First of all, he is compassionate. Next, he is humble. He recognizes, I don't have the right to come in here and make demands. So just those two things right off the bat, what do you notice about a Roman centurion and having those two characteristics? Is this guy par for the course? No. This is a very unique individual. Now, some have made arguments that maybe this is Cornelius that we see later on in the book of Acts. There's not really a good case we can make for that. Maybe, possibly, who knows? But we do know that this man was in the same vein as Cornelius, one who was living in the region of Judea, but he was not one exerting Rome's influence everywhere. He was one that was humble. And let's get a little bit more details about this individual. Verse 4, and when they came to Jesus, they begged him earnestly, saying that the one for whom he should do this was deserving. Now, does that seem a little bit odd to you, reading that?
He could have been a proselyte.
He could have been a proselyte. But notice what just happened. These Jewish elders went to Jesus and were begging him to save this man's servant, saying that the one who is asking you to do this is deserving of your help. They must have liked him. They must have looked at this man and not conflated him with all the others. Remember, we've talked about, did the Jews like the Roman occupation? As a general rule of thumb, no. No more than we would like some other foreign nation coming into our city and demanding how we live, right? We wouldn't enjoy that. We wouldn't be happy with that. These people weren't happy with this. But rather than looking at this man and saying, he is just a representation of Rome, Jesus, don't you dare touch this man. Don't you dare help these people. We need to make sure they're hurting at every turn. They said, no, Jesus, please help this man. He deserves it. He deserves it. That implies something else, too, that the city of Capernaum was not par for the course. If these are the leaders of this city, they're not acting normal. for the Jewish people. So we're seeing something very interesting, that Jesus is expressing his compassion, expressing his mercy to those who are willing to first humble themselves and be merciful themselves. Well, is that not exactly what we read in the Sermon on the Mount? Blessed are the merciful, for they shall obtain mercy. Absolutely. Jesus is staying well within his bounds to do this, and these people are acting in a way that is godly. And notice what they say, verse 5, for he loves our nation. He's not coming here and trying to make us like Rome. They say he loves our nation. He loves the people of this nation. And notice what it says too, and has built us a synagogue. So now we've gone beyond just a Roman centurion being kind to the people that are there. We're going beyond just a humble centurion. We are going to the point where this man is taking from his own wealth through however he has been paid in this sense, whether it be conquest, whether it be his just regular salary. He's taking of his own means, and he is providing places of worship to a people that his own empire says is just some crazy cult. This is a little bit of a different circumstance than we're used to reading in the New Testament, is it not? This man has gone above and beyond what he was even remotely commanded to do. And he is trying to help these people. And so these individuals, they're making this case for him. This man did not send them with his resume. He did not send these Jewish elders saying, now you be sure to tell Jesus I built you a synagogue. Now you be sure to tell Jesus I'm kind to your people. This is their own volition. All the centurion asked these men to do, go plead for my servant. Does that remind you of another example that Jesus has talked about in the past? Maybe the Pharisee and the publican that he talked about? How you have one man on the side of the Pharisee who says, I thank God I'm not like other men. I'm not like any of these other people. I pray, I fast, I do all these things. I'm so thankful I'm not like them, and especially not like this publican over here. And the publican, he's sitting there afar off, and he's beating his chest saying, Lord, be merciful to me, a sinner. Jesus often challenges the prejudice of individuals. How many of you have made this statement? Oh, they would never listen. How many of you have never said that but thought it? We probably just covered everybody at this point, right? We've all had that thought before, and sometimes that statement can be true. Sometimes it can be true. But is it not fascinating how much of the New Testament challenges our prejudice? Is it not fascinating how much of Jesus' apostles we would never have picked? Is it not fascinating how many of these apostles went out into places that people would not have gone? Remember, we go into Acts chapter 8, Philip goes into the region of Samaria. That's not really a place that the Jews would have gone, right? But he's going and he's preaching the gospel. Notice, that's chapter 8. When did the Gentiles become accepted into the church as a whole? 10. 2 chapters previous. He's going to people who are half Jews and half Gentiles. So this is before an apostle has actually made the claim we should be preaching to the Gentiles. Yes, absolutely. The church challenges status quo. The church challenges prejudice because culture does not affect the church. That's something a lot of people really mess up. A lot of people like to make the case that, well, the church is going to look different in different countries, and to a degree that's true. But what cannot be different from country to country? The teaching, the way people are living, that shouldn't be different, right? It doesn't matter what country you're in, you're not supposed to be a liar. It doesn't matter what country you're in, you're not supposed to be an alcoholic. It doesn't matter what country you're in, you're not supposed to curse people. It doesn't matter what your culture is. In fact, I've heard people make cases from pulpits of the Lord's church that if we went to a country like Ireland or many of these other nations out here, we'd have to be a little bit more lax on our teaching about alcohol to convert people. What a bunch of hogwash. What a bunch of hogwash. Peter went into Jerusalem talking about the Gentiles were accepted. You think that was a popular message? Not at all. But this man right here, it would have been very acceptable by the people of this day for Jesus just to dismiss this circumstance. Just leave it alone. This is a Roman. We don't deal with the Romans. But Jesus expressed compassion. Verse 6. Then Jesus went with them, and when he was already not far from the house, the centurion sent friends to him, saying to him, Lord, do not trouble yourself, for I am not worthy that you should enter under my roof. Therefore I did not even think myself worthy to come to you. But say the word, and my servant will be healed. For I also am a man placed under authority, having soldiers under me, and I say to one, go, and he goes, and to another, come, and he comes, and to my servant, do this, and he does it. Now, this is a very interesting situation. He first of all sends the Jews to go talk to Jesus, to ask him to come. Then when Jesus is about to the man's house, let's keep that in mind. Jesus was not ashamed to go into the man's house. He would have gone. But the man sends his friends to Jesus. Now that's interesting too. He doesn't just send servants, he sends his friends to go talk to him. That's a little bit different. He's sending people who are close to him to go talk to this man. And he says, Lord, do not trouble yourself. Again, I reiterate, this is a Roman centurion. And the sentence, Lord, do not trouble yourself, came out of this man's mouth in relation to a Jew. What does the word Lord denote? What's he saying there? Master, yeah, that's a little bit more like it. He is referencing an authority. He's not necessarily calling him God, but he is recognizing you are someone above me. That's pretty bold for a Roman to say. But he's saying, Lord, do not trouble yourself. Let me ask you this question. Have you ever said, oh, no, don't bother to someone who is under you? Say you're a manager at a business and your employee says, oh, I'm sorry, but I should have taken care of that. Oh, no, don't trouble yourself. That's okay. I'll take care of it. Maybe you're just a really good manager, but normally that's not going to be the case. Normally it'd be the case, hey, this is your job, go do it. Go take care of this. This man is referencing Jesus as if he is addressing a superior. Lord, do not trouble yourself. Don't come to my house. And notice what he says. For I am not worthy that you should come under my roof. Do you think this centurion maybe heard Jesus teaching? He's from the city of Capernaum. Jesus has been there multiple times. It's very likely he would have heard the preaching of Jesus. I mean, if there was a large crowd of people gathering to hear a speaker as a Roman soldier, do you not think you would deploy soldiers to make sure things stay peaceful?
He could have heard of his authority of speaking.
He could have heard of that. Yeah. He might have heard it personally. We don't know. He might have heard all these things or maybe had someone relay it to him. But they're recognizing what's taking place. Go ahead, Dan.
He seems like a very rational person. He sees the evidence and makes his decisions based upon evidence, not upon what he feels.
I am so glad you brought that up. For those who couldn't hear, Dan was referencing this man sounds like a very reasonable person. He hears the evidence and he changes his position based on the evidence. Let me ask you this. Do you know many reasonable people? Maybe you're one who has a good circle of friends. Let's ask this question. Are there more reasonable people than unreasonable? How do we know that? A lot of them are driving. Yes, that's a good point. We see a lot of people who, even though they have the evidence, they will continue to do things. I will be the first to admit I'm a very unreasonable person in one area in particular. I love fast food. I do. It's good. I enjoy it. No matter how much evidence I have heard that every time I eat that McDonald's hamburger, it's killing me a little bit, I still like it. That's not reasonable. That's not reasonable. Friends, when we're looking at Scripture as a whole and we're trying to teach people the gospel, we are going to deal with many people who are not reasonable. Jesus did too. I'm sure you've had this circumstance before if you've tried to study with someone or had a conversation with them. They see in the Bible where you're correct. But maybe this comes out. I know the Bible says, but that's just not how I was taught. Okay, that's unreasonable strike number one. Maybe someone says this. Well, in my Bible it says, okay, that's unreasonable strike number two. People come up with all kinds of excuses to not accept the truth when it's not comfortable for them. Let me ask you a question. If you heard, let's say one of the elders gets up in the middle of this class and says, hey, a bomb is coming to Cookeville, Tennessee. It's a nuclear explosion. It's going to destroy the whole city. What are your plans tonight? They just got changed. You know what most people will do, unfortunately? Nothing. Nothing. We were sitting in a worship assembly one time when I was younger, and we were all singing. I think it was a Wednesday night, and the fire alarm goes off. Blares for a while. You know what that congregation did? Kept on singing. Kept on singing. To which the song leader responded after we found out it was a false alarm. He said, I'm really glad that was a false alarm because a lot of us just made a really big decision tonight. They heard the evidence. It was false, but they didn't respond to it. They didn't respond to what was taking place. Now, when we're looking at this from Jesus' perspective, this man has heard the evidence. He is not going to Jesus because he just thinks, oh, this is just somebody. He has evidence this person is capable of doing the job that I am wanting him to do. And as a result of that, he took a position that was outside of his comfort zone and outside of culture's normalcy in order to make sure what needed to be taken care of was taken care of. Are we willing to do that? You say, well, Josh, I'm a Christian, so obviously I've made some big changes from this. Understandable, yes. But does that continue? When we continue to learn things that aren't right, what is our reaction? We should be willing to fix it, right? That's the rational response. That's saying, here's the evidence, I need to fix it. But most people, unfortunately, don't do that. I saw a couple hands on this side. I think, Monty, you had a hand up.
Yeah, I was just going to say, we're a very complacent people, and that complacency, you were talking about a bomb. Well, wait till you have some rain in on top of you, and you'll go down on the floor, or you'll find cover, or you'll go to a bunker.
Absolutely.
You'll look for it. Complacency is really bad. And if we continue to be complacent, we're not doing God's work.
Unfortunately, for many people, the remedy for complacency is action. And that is something that is generally uncomfortable for people. I made a comment one time. I heard I think it was a deacon in the Lord's church. He was leading a prayer. And in this prayer, he prayed for persecution. And many people in the crowd were very uncomfortable with that prayer. They went up to him afterwards and said, what are you thinking? He said, I've been a member of this church for 20 years, and I have never seen this congregation active. I have never seen us going door knocking. I've never seen us trying to convert the lost. I've seen us going through our motions Sunday after Sunday. I'm praying for persecution because maybe then we'll wake up. Unfortunately, for many people, that's what it takes. And yes, complacency is very, very difficult to avoid. Casey, I thought you had a hand up earlier?
Yeah. You talked a little bit about seeing, worthy there. And it was sticking out to me that we see that word 3 times
Absolutely. And we'll kind of summarize that, and we'll go back to that point when we get to the end of this section, because there is something to be brought out with that. But notice what happens next. He says, "But say the word, and my servant will be healed." He has enough faith in Jesus that he does not even believe Jesus has to come to his house physically and touch his servant. He believes. He says, just say the words. I believe you are powerful enough that you can just say the words, and my servant will be healed. And then he continues on. I also, notice that phrase there, I also am a man with soldiers under me, or placed under authority, having soldiers under me. And I say to one, go, and he goes, and to another, come, and he comes, and to my servant, do this, and he does it. What did he just say? He used one word there that changed that entire statement. He said authority, but what other word did he use? Also. Also. What did he just say to Jesus? I have authority over my soldiers. You have authority. I also am a man having authority. He's saying, Jesus, you have authority. You have a position of prominence. You are someone who deserves respect. I'm not worthy for you to come under my house because I recognize you have more authority than I do. Go ahead. Absolutely. And it's kind of interesting how this is mentioned too, because this man is trying to find common ground with Jesus, is he not? In that statement, he says, I understand that I have authority. I understand what that can mean. He said, I'm not worthy. I'm recognizing your position. You shouldn't trouble yourself here. I recognize who you are. That's kind of a common ground statement that he's trying to find with Jesus. It's as if he's pleading a case, thinking Jesus is not going to do this. He's trying to sweeten the deal as best he can. I know I'm not worthy. I know I don't deserve this. Jesus, just please do this. Just please take care of this for me. Then verse 9. When Jesus heard these things, he marveled at him. Let me ask a question that might seem a little bit controversial. Was Jesus ever surprised? Someone just went. He marveled. He marveled at this. He was taken aback by it. Exactly. Why would he be surprised? If he knows the hearts of everyone, if he knows what people are going to do, if he is God, which he is, why would he be surprised? Well, let me ask this. Why would he be angry? Why would he be happy? Because he's 100% human and he's 100% God. Jesus has been dealing with people after people after people who are not listening to him, who maybe even are listening to him, but they don't fully grasp what he's saying, and so one day down the line, they're going to abandon him. But he sees this man, and he takes special notice. You know who I'm reminded of when I see Jesus' reaction here? Job. Job. What did God tell the devil when the devil was coming into heaven? Have you considered my servant Job? There is none like him in all the earth. He's bragging on him. He's bragging on Job. And in this case here, he is taken aback by this man's faithfulness and willingness to do whatever he needs to do. And notice what Jesus says in response. Notice, this is the only thing we read of Jesus saying in this circumstance. This is it. The only thing we read of Jesus saying. He says, when Jesus heard these things, he marveled at him and turned around and said to the crowd that followed him, I say to you, I have not found such great faith, no, not even in Israel.
Admired him.
He admired him.
That's what it means in the Greek, that word.
Yes, absolutely. He is recognizing what just took place. He's saying, whoa, this is a faithful man. And notice what he does here that's interesting too. He turns to the crowd. He uses this as a teaching moment. And he tells this group of Jews, I have not seen such great faith, no, not in Israel. Go ahead, Larry.
Trying to think of a way to say this. It's probably a simple-minded perspective, but to put it as simply as I'm thinking about it, his reaction here doesn't mean that he didn't know it was going to happen. It doesn't mean that he didn't expect it. He was experiencing human emotions while he was here so that he could be an advocate and be who he is to be for us, and God allowed him to experience that. But I think of it like there's things in life that you do that maybe you have repeated in the past. You put a set of circumstances together and it creates something, whether it's a hobby or something that you really enjoyed, and it can still be amazing to you the 10th time because it's something that brings you extreme joy. It's a human emotion. So I think it wasn't really that it surprised him that he didn't expect it, that he didn't know it was going to happen, but actually seeing it happen probably brought him a human emotion there.
Absolutely.
It was an extraordinary event.
It was an extraordinary event. I would say this to add to all these points as well. Can you feel an emotion while logically knowing it's different? You can have that happen, right? That's the physical side of us. Have you ever jumped when someone's in the room and you know they're in the room? You know for a fact they're there, but you just round the corner and you say, hey, I was just going to tell you, and they're right there, and you jump, right? Did you know they were around the corner? Well, yeah, you knew they were there. They were talking to you, or you were talking to them. But you still had a reaction to it, a physical reaction to it that maybe is a little different than your thought process. Yes, Jesus knew the heart of this man. He knew what he was seeing, but it still was amazing to him. Now, I think that's what Larry was talking about there. It's a great point to bring out. He still was amazed by what's happening, not because it was shocking or unrealistic, or he just never had any idea this could happen, but because it is something that is incredible to God. Go ahead.
A couple things real quick. One thing that sticks out to me about what the centurion did here is really no different than what our prayers are, because we're not physically seeing God come and do something, but we should be recognizing he has the authority to do what I'm asking him to do. And would God ever look at my prayer and marvel at my prayer? Like, wow, okay, this person really does have faith and really does believe that I can do this.
Yeah.
And another thing about the centurion too is from a worldly standpoint, I think sometimes as Christians we're hesitant when we get out into the secular world, at our jobs in different places, to try to buck the system more or less. But this centurion didn't kind of go along to get along. He wasn't, I guarantee his superiors knew that he helped build a synagogue. I mean, that's probably wasn't hidden. I'm sure this guy wasn't running around cursing everybody. He cares enough for his servants in his own household to go out of his way to do something like this. And then you had Cornelius doing the same thing. But apparently he wasn't being punished for that. And I think sometimes when we're at our jobs, we're afraid to say, you know what, I'm not going to participate in that. I'm not going to do that because we're afraid of backlash against us. One, if we do get backlash, then that's part of what we do with as Christians. But two, we might be surprised. People may respect that. And be like, you know what? Okay. I'm okay with you.
That's a great point to bring out here. I love the fact that throughout this story, the centurion never met Jesus. He never spoke to him. Everything that happens is happening off screen for him. He has no idea what Jesus is saying. He didn't hear Jesus speak to the crowd and say, I've not seen such great faith, no, not in Israel. He didn't hear any of that. He's sitting here with his servant, just waiting for him to magically get up and walk. That's the level of faith he had. You've all heard the statement before, and it's an old preacherism, but it does bear repeating. If you're going to pray for rain, what are you supposed to bring? An umbrella. Bring an umbrella. Have faith in what you're saying. Have faith in what you're doing. And this man, as Jonathan brought up, this man was going outside of what would have been considered normal. And for many Christians, we have this fear of breaking the system, of bucking the system, of going against the way things are designed. But friends, that's what Christianity is to its core, is a disrupting of the world. We go over to the New Testament, or later on in the New Testament, when we see Paul going into Thessalonica. Goes into Thessalonica. And they take out Jason and his household, and what do they say? These who have turned the world upside down have come here also. Can anyone say that about us? Have we turned the world upside down? Have we acted differently because of our faith? Well, that's going to wrap up where we are for verses 1 through 10. We'll pick up there next time. Thank you so much for your attention.
It's a time of our midweek Bible study that we take a few moments to have a quick invitation. So I try to share something that's maybe interesting or something that's interesting to me, at least whenever I do these invitations. And tonight I want to tell you a little bit something about honeybees. Honeybees are an amazing part of God's creation. And I know a few people that do beekeeping, and I follow them some on social media. And I see some of the things that they do with them, so it got me interested in them. And I don't beekeep myself, so what I know about them I've learned through my friends or through looking at it on social media. And what I want to tell you about something tonight, it's an interesting thing about the hive when the queen dies. You know, a queen is always going to die. She's got a lifespan like all the rest of them. But when a queen dies, that puts the colony into a bit of disarray. The queen gives life to the colony. She maintains order in a perfectly organized society. And when she dies, it's a big deal. The life of the hive slows down, and without eggs, there is no future. In a few weeks, the colony would not be able to survive without the queen and the order that she keeps. But the bees don't panic, and they don't look for help from the outside. Through extraordinary intelligence and God-given instincts, they trigger an emergency response that collectively they work to save the hive. The transformation begins with a simple but essential choice. The worker bees choose a common larva. Those who would normally just be worker bees like any of the rest of the larvae, but they're selected, and when they're selected, they're nothing special. They're not born different, but their fate at that moment when they're selected immediately starts to change. They're chosen to receive a special food called a royal jelly. And as I read about this, I learned that there's other uses for this, but this is the main use that the bees use. And when they take this royal jelly, it's a rare substance produced by healthy bees. It's rich in proteins and vitamins and compounds, and it causes a change in the larva that it's given to. This royal food is the purest in the sense of the word. The larva, when fed exclusively with this substance, will no longer follow the normal path. Within a few days, their bodies begin to develop differently. Their body grows larger and stronger. Their lifespan is multiplied by almost 20. They will never be the same again, and their focus is changed. See, the queen is not chosen based on her genes. She is created. What makes this process fascinating is there's no genetic difference between a worker larva or a worker bee and a queen until they're fed this royal jelly. They have the same genetic code. There's no genetic difference in them at all. And DNA does not determine their destiny. It's the nutrition and what they're fed and the decisions that are made by the hive. This metamorphosis does not just save the larva, it saves the entire colony. Once the new queen is ready, she takes over the hive, she begins to lay eggs, she restores order, and the cycle collectively for the hive goes back to a normal pace. A once threatened with extinction colony now is stronger, organized, balanced again. It's a silent and profound lesson, and when I read this and I thought about this and I considered what that seemed like to me, I thought, that's very similar in life. It's not where we start out. It's not what we know when we're born or when we're living as a normal person in society. It's when somebody chooses to share the gospel with us, that when the gospel is shared with us, we can never be the same again. We have this information that we have to do something with, and if we ingest it and absorb it and take it on like the bee does, like the larva does to become a queen, if we take this gospel and we accept it, it changes us into something special. It changes us into a Christian, and we'll never be the same again. We can be a Christian washed from our sins by Christ through baptism. Romans 6:3-4 says this, "Or do you not know that as many of us as were baptized into Christ were baptized into his death? Therefore we were buried with him through baptism into death, that just as Christ was raised from the dead by the glory of the Father, even so we also should walk in newness of life." So when the gospel is shared with you, you will ever be different with this knowledge, and that's what we would love to do with you tonight. If you're not a Christian and you know you're not a Christian, you don't have a relationship with God, we would love to spend time studying with you and share this with you so that you would have an opportunity of heaven and eternal life. If you're a Christian and you've strayed from the path and you're no longer feeling like you have that relationship with God, also, we would like to help you as well. We can pray with you and for you, and you have that opportunity now as we stand and sing.